the second book's called Alchemy something. And it was really interesting. I just started it like the other day. He's like, yeah, so in this book, the next couple chapters are going to be on identity. And the chapters after that are going to be on alchemy. And I was like, what?
Whoa!
What?
Welcome back to Since 3000. I'm your host, Danielle Leslie, and I'm so glad you decided to join me because I have a really amazing guest I cannot wait for you to meet. You've probably seen his work without even realizing it. Iconic photographs of celebrities like Justin Bieber, Usher, Jessica Alba, and more. Advertising work for brands like Nike and Coca-Cola and editorial shoots for Condé Nast, Marie Claire and Cosmopolitan. He is a man of many skills and talents, and he's a talented designer creating custom totem crowns, which you'll hear all about, and a growing line of accessories. He's the host of the Onken radio podcast and a self-proclaimed creative alchemist. I'm so excited to welcome the incredible Nick Onken to Since 3000. Welcome, Nick!
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
For
Oh my
me.
gosh, what an honor.
So fun.
Yeah. I'm so excited to bring you today's episode, but before we do, I need to make sure you've heard about Member Up. So community-driven products are the future, but Facebook groups are a thing of the past. And after 10 plus years in the online education space, I've taken all my learnings and I've built this incredible platform, Member Up. It's a customizable, easy to use, all-in-one platform where you can build a premium course, community, or membership site without the tech headache. Gone are the days of having to duct tape together your content, your community, your payments, all on different platforms. I want you to do me a favor, do yourself a favor, and head over right now to memberup.com/Danielle. And you can get started for free today. I promise you, I can't wait for you to see this platform. It's beautiful. Okay, the design is amazing. Your community is going to feel at home here, and you are going to take pride in your online business. It is the place to start. Head over to memberup.com/Danielle. Now let's get into the episode. I had the opportunity to have you photograph me. Actually, the photos for this podcast a year ago. And isn't that wild? Oh my gosh.
So wild.
And I remember Crystal, my best friend, she came and like almost like offered you on a plate to me. She was like, I found this amazing photographer. It's Nick Onken. And I was like, he's on my vision board. And I'm like, how did you know?
Way.
And I'm like, okay, that's why we're best friends. But I had already like seen you online and I was like, he's such an interesting guy. And so it was such an honor to work with you.
Yeah,
and you're just so dope. But I'm curious about your just photography journey and how that got started because you've photographed like Usher, Justin Bieber, like Lewis Howes, like big names, all kinds of people. Yeah. So I'm curious, where did it start? Where was that first person you photographed, that first like big job you got, and how on earth did that happen?
Yeah, so I was a graphic designer first. That's what I went to school for. And so I took some photography classes in high school and college just because they were part of the design program. Ended up doing that for 5 years, and then I picked up a digital camera when that technology got good enough to actually use on the computer. And started shooting just for my design work and started having fun with it. And then I convinced a nonprofit design client of mine to split the expenses on a trip to Africa.
Wow, I love that.
Yeah, to build a photo library for them. And I was like,
where did you go specifically?
So I went to Zimbabwe, Uganda, Kenya, and Burundi. It was like a life-changing trip.
Whoa.
Life-changing, yeah.
So you built a photo lab?
Photo library for them. So like kind of what we did for you and what I do for a lot of clients, it's like we build a library of images that they can use for the brand.
Got it.
Honestly, like I had no idea what I was doing. I literally had a glorified point and shoot camera.
Whoa.
And they're like, yeah, that sounds great. I was like,
oh my gosh.
Okay. Because nobody knew. Like this was just kind of, I was offering this to them because I wanted to just practice. And so they paid for my travels to go over there. And that was the first time that I've ever had anything like that. And I was like, wait, people paying me to fly around the world.
Where did you even, so for you to be just beginning your journey and to have someone call it like having audacity, you know, like to like make that kind of request. I'm curious, where did the idea come from or the confidence, you know, to even make the request in the first place?
You know, I asked myself the same question because I was like, what?
Yeah.
Well, I had a friend who was an IT guy and he had donated his time to like this organization in Kenya, and he had gone over there and they paid for him to go over there and set up this whole IT network and stuff like that. And I was like, I want to do that. I want to like donate my time, but also have somebody pay for my travel. And this was like, early days. And I was like, what? I mean, nobody's going to pay me to do graphic design on location. I was like, oh, wait, I've been taking photos. Maybe I could do a photo thing.
Wow.
And so that's where the idea came from.
Got it.
And then I was like, let's just throw it out there and see what sticks. And then so I emailed them and asked them, and they were like, yeah, that sounds great. Let's do it. And I was like, really? I mean, yeah, let's do it.
Like, of course. So that kind of reminds me of when they talk about how when you're in the room and not that we rate people, but let's just say according to what you're attracted to, there is the 11 or the 10 or whatever in the room, and it's like everyone's going for the middle because we're like, that's a safer route. Whereas there's like the one person who is, you essentially asked for the 10, for the 11, and they probably had no inquiries for that. And they're like, oh, actually, yeah. Instead of asking for, what's been asked for before.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's like at this, what's the worst? They could just say no.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, why not? And then they said yes. And I was like, oh, yeah, great. Let's do it. And I literally had to reverse engineer and figure out what I was doing. And then I was like, okay, well, how do you do that? So I found another photographer whose work I really liked, and I asked him, and he ended up like giving me some like tips and tricks and things that I could utilize to go. And I just kind of prepped myself as much as I could, and then did the whole trip, and it was life-changing. I mean, that was my first time in the developing world. I've never been in that space before, and you see kids like running around on the streets, and they'll give you the shirt off their back, and they don't even have a shirt off their back. And it was just like this whole interaction that I had never been in before. And I think that's really helped shaped everything, my whole perspective on life and my business. And so I've always been giving back as part of my business since then, which is, I think also that's like a foyer into everything else, but into like shooting all these different personalities and things like that. So that was like that was the eye-opening trip, just life perspective wise, but also B, opening my eyes to the world of photography. I was like, oh, somebody's gonna pay me to travel around the world and take photos? This is amazing. Yeah, let's do this. And so, but I was still kind of like, I'm reflecting on Identity Alchemy. For me, like I was still attached to the identity of being a graphic designer. So I was like still on the fence of like letting that go, or however that looked, because I was like, that was the track that I was wanting to be on, was like graphic design. But then this photography thing came into my field, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. So then I connected with a photographer in Seattle, and he kind of like took me under his wing and showed me some things, opened my eyes to like actually photography can be a business and you can actually make money with it. And I had no clue that was the case. And so from there I was like, oh, I want to be a commercial photographer. And that's where I began to like let go of the design and kind of really decide, oh, this is what I'm going to do. And again, then I went and like sort of reverse engineering everything, and like, okay, if I want to be shooting this, what do I have to do to get there? I have to be shooting work that people would like want to hire me to do that. So you're talking like campaigns for Nike and Reebok and Coca-Cola. And
so what was the first commercial campaign you worked on?
So the first commercial campaign was a Nike job.
What?
And this was like a couple years, literally like 2 years later.
Wow.
I get this call from a friend, or actually no, I get this call, it wasn't even from my friend, from New York. I was still in Seattle at the time. And this was a couple days before Christmas. And he's like, yeah, I'm a producer for Nike, and we have this shoot next week. I want to see if you're available, and because we like your friend, or like our art director Brian recommended you. And I was like, oh. He's like, yeah, we want you to shoot these guys. It's what was it, like Ben Roethlisberger and Brian Urlacher and Albert Pujols and Mariano Rivera. I literally had to like write these down to Google them, because I was like, I don't know who these people are, but I'm assuming they're a big deal. Yeah, they're like some of the biggest like sports players in like baseball and football, and I literally had to write them down. Like I was like, how do you spell that again? Writing them down so I could go home and Google them later and figure out who they were.
You're like, it's Nike, so I feel like they're probably a big deal.
Yeah, it's Nike, so I think we're good there.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then it took a couple days to negotiate, and it was literally the next Monday, and Christmas was in between. Christmas was on Saturday. So I had to like figure all this stuff out, and they didn't like sign off on it until Thursday.
Wow.
I had to find equipment in San Diego. I had to book tickets to leave on Monday and shoot Tuesday.
And what was the shoot like? How do you remember yourself being on the shoot?
I was like, what is happening? I guess if I'm been asked to do this, then there's something that says, okay, then they looked at my work and they said, okay, yes, he's capable of doing this. And it was the most money I've ever been paid for a shoot before. And I was like, this is, and it was like the Amazing Race. We flew to San Diego, and then the next week we flew to Pittsburgh. And I had to figure out how to I didn't even really know studio lighting at this point. I'd been playing with it a little bit. And I ended up finding a lighting tech assistant, and he ended up driving the equipment down to San Diego and flying with us and setting up all the lighting for me and everything. Cause I was like, I need this. I need to figure this out. And so I would guide him visually of what I wanted. And then he made it all happen technically, lighting wise.
I love that because sometimes we can take a DIY approach and be like, all right, I've got to figure it all out and do it myself. But it sounds like in that moment, you're like, okay, I'm the visionary. Let me just tell you what I see. And then relinquish control and gave someone else permission to be in their genius zone, to be like, all right, I got the tech side. Cool. You want the glow? We get the glow. This is how you do it.
Exactly. So yeah, that was kind of my first really big job. And then I was just like, and then I didn't, this was funny because I was like, oh, I'm this commercial photographer. I just shot for Nike. I'm like, yeah, what's up?
Yes.
And then I didn't see anything like that for 2 years. It was crickets for 2 years. I mean, I was shooting, I would shoot weddings and I would shoot portraits and do different things. But yeah, I didn't see any big jobs like that for a couple of years. And then a couple of years later, I got another Nike job. And then I started doing a lot of Nike work for a couple of years.
Oh, wow.
And then I got I think when was that? That was 2000. So in 2009, I signed with an agent in New York. Yeah. And I'd started coming.
I hadn't thought of a photographer signing with an agent. So is this a talent agent?
Yeah. So in the commercial editorial world, there's agents and there's a whole system of the way that it works. And you go after ad agencies and they represent. And this is way back before, this was just when internet was getting good enough and people were doing actual photography websites, but we had to have actual physical portfolios. I had 10 portfolios.
Wow.
And they would if it's somebody wanted to hire me for a job, they would be like, oh, I want to get your portfolio. And so my agent would have to FedEx overnight this 11 by 14 inch portfolio that you flip through. It's a whole book.
Pre-website, pre-Instagram.
Yeah, because people didn't trust the quality of the web at that point, so they wanted to see an actual physical portfolio book. So that was right around the time that I met my friend Adam Braun, who founded this charity called Pencils of Promise.
Yes.
And they build schools for kids in the developing world, and they started in Laos, which was our first trip together.
Wow.
Because he was just like, hey. And this is when my career started taking off. And he was like, hey, I'm going to Laos. And we met up for a beer. And he was like, I'm going to Laos in December if you want to come. I can't pay for you, but you're welcome to come. And this is he had built one school. So there was not even barely an organization at all. It was just, he had funded another school and he was just starting to organize the nonprofit. But he was like, if you want to come, great.
You were there in Pencils of Promise is one of the largest. I mean, it's an example people look at as what's possible with an organization that's making a huge difference. That's amazing. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So that was I helped build the branding imagery for Pencils of Promise. I've been to all the countries multiple times and we just do brand shoots essentially. And it's great because we get to go and hang out with the kids at the schools and it's such a beautiful time. So that first trip was to Laos, and that was really what kicked off the whole organization, was that trip.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and it was just it was the Wild Wild West. It was me and Adam and this woman Leslie, and Leslie was just kind of oh, that sounds fun. She was a school teacher, just kind of coming to hang out with us, and we were just going through the jungles and up rivers and all this stuff to go visit these different sites and potential sites and things like that. And then that's kind of the organization started to be built from that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so giving back, I was like, I want to do this as a piece of my business. So we've done at least one trip a year to the different countries and stuff like that. Up until COVID, everything's kind of shifted since then. But yeah, then a year, I would say probably a year and a half later, I released a photography book, a how-to photography book.
Oh, no way, a physical book.
Yeah.
Oh,
Published,
God.
Random House.
No way.
Cool. It feels like it was so long ago. I just forget that I even wrote a book.
was like, I didn't know this. Oh, wow.
Yeah. And we did I did a huge gallery showing in the city with and I just blew up photos from that Pencils of Promise trip. So we kind of did a tag team. I used that as a way to raise awareness for the organization. And right around that time, Adam, we were hanging out, and Adam was like, yo, check it out. My brother found this kid on the internet. He's going to be huge one day. His name's Justin Bieber.
What?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah, I was like, who? What? Okay, cool, whatever.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and so, it was so funny. And then literally a year later after that, Justin blew up, became the biggest thing since sliced bread. And
so you photographed him.
It took a while for me to actually meet and get in, because at that time Scooter, his brother, became so big that he's untouchable. And Adam had told me about him many times, had told him about me many times, but unless you're in his radar, he's so busy, he's one of the biggest music moguls out there. Mm-hmm. He wouldn't register that. And then a couple years later, it was a while later, after the Never Say Never movie came out, and Scooter actually became a public profile.
Yes.
I got this email from Scooter's email, he's like, hey Nick, it's Adam. I'm on Scooter's phone.
Wait, what?
Yeah, he's like, we're in Guatemala. Can you come down tonight or tomorrow? And I was like, because he's like, this is my brother's first time in the field, and we want to capture that and capture some images for the charity and stuff like that. And I was like, well, I got a big campaign tomorrow to shoot, but it was like shooting a Foot Locker campaign.
Well, it is kind of inconvenient time for me.
I was like, I could come down first thing Saturday, and I would probably have 24 hours down there, but that's all we really need. He's like, great, book a ticket, come down. So I booked a ticket, left at 6 a.m. Saturday, flew down to Guatemala for 24 hours, we met up in a van. I hopped in with them, and then all of us went to the schools, and I was shooting photos, and that's kind of where I got to know Scooter, and then that built a relationship there, and then ended up traveling with him. 6 months later, we ended up going on vacation with Usher, and it was just this whole surreal world, and that led to photographing Justin and Usher and just building that relationship. So. Wow. It's been an interesting ride.
That's amazing. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I just love how you're able to connect with people in a genuine way, and they're like, why wouldn't we want you to photograph and come on this trip and be the person to help us build this out? I love that.
Yeah. I think being a photographer really takes, if you're photographing people, it takes a personality to really kind of get in there and build rapport with people and be cool, and especially because I've photographed so many different from kids in Africa all the way to Bieber, and so it's everyone in between. It's you're dancing with different personalities and different energies, and you've got to figure out how to get in there and build a rapport with somebody to the point of getting them at ease and making them feel comfortable. And so I've learned a lot.
You do that so beautifully. And I would say even today you arrived and you're like, I have a gift for you. And you're like, check this out. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So you designed these.
I did, yeah.
I love this. Yeah. Why did you decide to design the fan, and explain what's on it and the elements?
Yeah, well, so my hat brand Onken Made is, my whole brand is really around activating people's superpowers, or the totem crown hats are really they are, totem is a thing of spiritual significance or meaning.
Let's pause. So yes, let's start at the hats.
Yeah, because that'll lead into all of this. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. One of the most noticeable things about you is your hat, and then I realized you make these and you call them totem crowns.
Yeah.
How did this start? And when I say make, I mean the encrypt. What am I?
Yeah, I call them the light codes.
The codes.
Codes. Yeah.
So tell me about the totem crowns.
So the totem crowns, I got into hats probably 5 or 6 years ago from a friend of mine, and then probably 3 years ago is when I was I kind of took some of those that I was funny. This is like all full circle, right? I had took a hat that I had made with her, and I just started. I had a whole bunch of them that I was kind of doing my own designs with. I was burning them and doing different things. And then I had this one where it was okay, this feels really what I really love. And I was wearing it around. I was in the Soho House in LA. And and I was walking down. I got up to go to the bathroom, and I started walking across the room, and I heard this like, "Yo, man, I like your hat." And I was like, "Okay." I turned around, and it was Justin Bieber.
Whoa!
Yeah, it was like Justin and Haley, and they were like, I was like,
that is wild.
Ironic.
Yeah.
And I had shot him like 2 or 3 times since this, but it was a while back, and I had a shaved head at that point, and then when I saw him, I had like my long hair now, and so he didn't even recognize me. He's like, I was like, "It's Nick." He's like, "Oh, hey, I saw that." So he's like, "That was another hat maker," and I was like, "No, it's mine." He's like, "Oh, it's so cool, yeah." And then he just like scurried off and does his thing.
Whoa.
Yeah, so I was like, "Oh, okay. If I'm getting,"
you're like, "I think I got something here, maybe."
If I'm getting hollered at by Justin, like just randomly in a place, I was like, maybe I should probably like do something with this. And so that was where that was the kind of the catalyst for me to be like, okay, let me invest some money into all the tools and everything that it takes to do these. There's like hat blocks and everything, because I make them by hand. Like you have to block the felt and all this stuff. So they're all custom. And eventually, this is like kind of within the last year, I did a rebrand, which is what we're seeing here. And I started calling them totem crowns, because when I do a custom process, I give them a form to fill out, and I ask like, what's meaningful to you, like what spiritual things, or what, it doesn't have to be spiritual, but like I think spiritual. I've become a more spiritual person over the last few years, and so that's just follow the rabbit of where my own journey has gone. And so a totem is like something of a spiritual significance or meaning to you, and then obviously a crown is a crown. So like, let's just call them totem crowns, because I'm doing stuff it's way more customized, it's way more meaningful to whoever wears it. And then I'm even putting like intentions inside I'll take your intention and put it inside the hat there. Wow. And then, when you put it on, it's like, okay, I'm wearing the intention. And there's really such a spiritual significance around that.
Can you share the intention you have on this one?
Yeah, this one says move with gratitude. Or no, wait, this one says magic is within you.
Magic is within you.
It is. Magic is within. So I did a rebrand, and I wanted it so there's the rabbit, so follow the white rabbit. That's always been like a thing. It's like the brand is around, diving into your own consciousness, diving into who you are. And then these are like the crystallization. The hat's really crystallization of the universe inside of you.
I love that.
So mushrooms, I mean.
What can we say?
That is the rabbit hole. And then butterfly, it's the metamorphosis, and that's the identity alchemy piece as well, that kind of ties everything in together. And so activate your superpowers and change the world and from the universe inside of you. So that's what the brand is about. So I just did some silk scarves that I just put out, and started to make jewelry, and just I made this morning.
Oh wow! I just made this morning.
Yeah, I had this magic wand casted, designed and casted, and then I just put it on the chain this morning. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love this. So you mentioned.
Oh yeah, I love frequency.
Oh, I love that! Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So you got a whole jewelry line happening.
Yeah, it's just happening. It's in production.
Out.
I'm like,
that's what I love about you. You just seem to you are truly a vessel. Like that you are, and you like let things flow out, and it's all beautifully like self-expressed. The sense I get from you is that it is just like free flowing.
Yeah, and I think that's the alchemy, right? Like that's the inner alchemy piece, is to be able to get to that space. And I think plant medicine has definitely helped with that. And I've been reading a lot of different books and things like. So it's like, how can we create an open channel to let source or divinity flow through us, because we are divinity, and self-express. And we can get to our fullest self-expression. Like that's where we live. That's where the magic lies. That's what is magical about life. We are divinity, just wanting to express and experience this life to the fullest. But we're the ones that create the limiting beliefs, and from society, what society has told us to be, who society has told us to be. And that pretty soon just gets. Have you seen the movie Soul?
Yes, I love that.
It's such a great movie, and it's really so true. And it's when you're not living in your truth, and you have all these negative stories and beliefs that are happening, it covers up your true essence.
Absolutely. It was interesting. I was just at a dinner for our like CEO retreat, and one of the ladies was sharing, when I was a little kid, we shared what we wish our superpower was. And so I was like, okay, well, what do you wish it was now? And so we each shared what we wish it was as an adult, as we are now. And what was top of mind for me was being able to decipher the difference between like my voice, that is spirit, God, versus, society, ego, others, their desires, what they do. And I find that as I progress in my journey, and I'm new to spirituality myself in the last few years, and so I have a lot to learn, and I've been having fun learning it. But as I progress in my journey, that's like a muscle. I'm like, ooh, this is a muscle to work out. Like just being able to decipher the different, where is this message coming from? Is it from inside or is it from the outside?
Well, yeah, and we're the ones that get in the way of that. It's like our head is the thing that gets in the way of that, and the second guessing and the fear. It's like it's all comes out of love and fear. And when we're making decisions out of fear versus love, and that shows up in everything.
And I would love to hear about your spiritual journey, because you mentioned it started like a few years ago. So I'm curious, what have been the biggest lessons for you, and what does that even look like for you, your spiritual journey?
Yeah, the spiritual journey for me, I guess, kind of started in two phases. So my commercial, as social media started to rise, my commercial like business was like starting to struggle, because like the industry didn't know what to do with itself. Like people were like, well, it's social media, we don't want to pay as much as we would for a print campaign. And so then you had this whole thing, and you had like way more photographers coming in, doing those jobs for basically nothing or for free. And then like you're trying to figure out, it was this whole thing. And so I started losing all these different bids, and my business started crashing, and I was like, what is going on? And I started crashing. And I was like, like I didn't know what was happening. And then Lewis, actually, my friend Lewis Howes, he was like, hey, I'm doing this like emotional intelligence and leadership training. This is out in LA. And I was like, I need that. Tell me more.
Yes, I love it.
Yeah, so he's like, and he had like skipped Summit series to go to one of the weekends.
Whoa, you're like, you're skipping Summit.
I was like,
yeah. This must be a big deal.
Yeah, exactly.
This must be cool.
Because I was like, I want to go to Summit series.
Right?
Yeah. He's like, I'm skipping this year. I was like, wow, that's impressive. Okay, sign me up. Sign me up. So I started going to this, it's called MITT out in LA, and it was really, I don't know if you've ever done Landmark or heard of Landmark.
Yes, oh my God, Landmark was life-changing.
Yeah, so it's the same, so they started from EST. They both started from EST, which is the same curriculum. Oh. MITT was just a more experiential version of the teachings.
Wait, what is EST?
EST is like, it was what it was before Landmark, right?
Oh,
so
okay.
people, EST, the program, right, around limiting beliefs and living in possibility, whatever, like the whole curriculum that they teach came from EST. And then they started Landmark, and then they also started MITT.
Okay.
And then they kind of shifted. So they teach the same things, but MITT has way more like exercises. So they anchor the teachings with actual experience, because how you show up in with one thing is how you show up in everything. And so how you show up in these exercises is how you show up in life. So they really pressure cook these things, and then they up to the surface. You're actually feeling these emotions, right?
I love that.
Yeah,
because my experience in Landmark, I remember, we were encouraged to go to the front of the room, because then at least you would get some modicum of like exercise and being in the moment. But a lot of it for me was learning through others, and then, making sure I did my part of the work outside of the room. Yeah. But I love that. That sounds like a great experience.
Yeah, this was like everybody gets to participate. And if you're not participating, what's keeping you from participating? Right. So it's a whole different dynamic.
Yep.
And then that pressure cooks feelings, and then like somebody shares, and then the trainer goes in and like 360 train around that, right?
What year did you do this?
2014 or 15 maybe.
Okay.
Something
okay,
like
cool.
That. Yeah. And that was life-changing for me. It really it showed me I discovered that this huge fear of judgment from my parents and the way that they showed up to me. And so that was very eye-opening. And then I went all the way to the top program where we had to it was public speaking. So they literally, it was, and I did it with Lewis and Preston and Alexi and
oh my gosh,
my friends Brad and Jenna, and who now started ALA, which is, if you're gonna do, it's all Ascension Leadership Academy, same concept, same curriculum, but they just created an even better container. So you're going to do it, go to ALA.
Okay.
Same thing, just better container.
Okay.
So yeah, and like they would make us we had to literally get up in front of a group of 20 and just like speak, and then everybody gives you direct feedback. And you're like,
wow.
Whoa. Yeah, talk about learning experience.
Right, you're like, why is this hurting me right now?
And then the thesis, you had to like you had to create a 2-hour workshop and enroll at least 30 people into the workshop and do the whole thing.
Really? Yeah. What workshop did you do?
So I did mine on seeing life through the lens of creativity and creating your life.
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah. So it was fun. So that was really that was the slump. So I realized that I was finding all my self-worth in being a photographer and who I was shooting, what I was shooting, and realizing that my ego identity was so attached to that. And that's why I crashed when my business crashed.
Oh, so good.
Yeah, so that kind of that was okay, then I was on an upswing, kind of different space of life. I started my podcast. I was like, I have all these cool friends. I'm just going to interview them. So I was interviewed Scooter and Usher and Lewis and all these people on my podcast. It was great. Wow. And then I got into another relationship probably 5 years ago. And that relationship was the relationship that I needed.
Oh, what do you mean by that?
It was the relationship that really pushed me. It was great, but it was also very toxic. And then it pushed me into a dark night of the soul. So between that and trying to restructure my business and trying to keep up with my business and support this person and really take on all of that, it was a lot.
Can you break down Dark Night of the Soul? Because you were actually the first person I heard that term from. And I remember you saying it and I was like, oh, that's new. That's a new word for me.
Yeah.
So for anyone who doesn't know, what was
Well,
it?
I didn't even know it until
right.
a while,
and you got
right?
language
So
around
so
it later.
I go through this breakup. I start and I was like, I just feel I don't want to do anything. I wouldn't necessarily say I was suicidal, but I was like, what's the point of all this? It's all made up. We're all just this is all just made up so that we can exist, right? And I was like, why are we here? And then I did BUFO, 5-MeO-DMT, and that sent me to the stratosphere and back. Whoa. And I was like, whoa, well, if that's out there and that's what really exists, then really what are we doing here?
Double down.
And I was like, oh, man.
Really
and now I'm in even darker, whatever. And I didn't even know the term Dark Night of the Soul. And then a couple months later, I was just one step in front of the other. I was just keep going, one step at a time, every day, just try to feel better. Mm-hmm. And I was just really in this dark time. And then I went to this yoga or acro yoga thing. And after the acro yoga, this guy was he's like, hey, if you guys want, I train with Wim Hof. I'm a trainer. And if you guys want to do a breathwork session, I'm happy to lead one. And so he led this breathwork session. And he turned out the lights. Everybody put an eye mask on. He put some music on and led us through this 6 rounds of Wim Hof breathwork. And I was like, whoa, because I started hitting these states in the breathwork that I hit in DMT.
Whoa.
And I was like, whoa, this is just with breath.
How many minutes was that session?
It was 45 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was like, I have to do this because I was I feel better. I don't know what this is, but I feel better.
Can you give us an example of, was it the rapid breaths in and out?
Yeah, so it's you do 2.5 minutes of circular breathing where you're not taking a pause in between. You're and you're laying on your back with an eye mask typically if you want, because it makes you go inward. And then do 2.5 minutes of that so it pumps your body full of oxygen. And then you exhale all of your air and you hold for as long as you can. And what's crazy is when you've pumped your body full of oxygen, you can actually hold your breath for 3, sometimes 4 minutes.
Whoa.
On an empty chamber.
Wow.
And then you hold it until you can't hold it anymore. And then you take a breath in and hold it at the top. And you get this rush of whatever that is. And what it's doing is it's pulling you out of your default mode network in your brain. So the default mode network in your brain is the neural net of the story that you run in your mind. So in depression, PTSD, you're running a story. We all run stories, right? Mm-hmm. Typically stories that don't serve us. Mm-hmm. And so those stories, and the more you think the story, the more the neural nets get woven. And the more harder it is to pull yourself. When you get in your head, right? You're ugh. Mm-hmm. So the breath work and psychedelics and meditation, they pull you out of that default mode network. And so that's what I experienced. was this like, whoa, I'm free.
You got a breath of fresh air, like, so to speak.
Yeah, it's almost like you're free from your own mind.
Whoa.
Yeah, and I was like, okay. I started doing it every day.
Wow.
Every day, and I had like the timer, and I was doing the thing, and then I was like, actually, maybe I should just so I created my own like breathwork track. I took some music and overlaid like my own vocal guiding at the right time constraints, or the timestamps, so that I can just like drop in more deeper in a meditation instead of looking at a stopwatch.
So when the voice prompts, was it more instructional?
It was like a voice meditation, right? So it was like, okay, now it's like start round 1, start now. And then breathe, and then like at the 2.5 minute mark, I would say like, take 2 more breaths, exhale, and hold. So that I knew it was like it was vocally guiding me, so I could just hear it versus like having to look at because that allows you to drop in even deeper. And then
you had music, or like,
I used like a Moby soundtrack. Like I just use a Moby album as a soundtrack, and it's
Nice.
amazing. It's like I still do it. I still use it, and I'll take people through it as well. But yeah, it was like a really amazing experience. And then I was like looking up breath work, and I was researching this stuff, and I saw something on Facebook like holotropic breath work, and I was like, what is this? And I saw a friend of mine, John Stein, actually, he was running Summit stuff for a while. I saw he liked it, and I was like, emailed him, and I was like, oh, you like this holotropic breathwork stuff? He's like, yeah, I was going through a dark night of the soul, and I was like, what is a dark night of the soul? And he was like, oh, it's like when you're kind of like in this weird depression, like state or something like that. So I started Googling dark night of the soul, and I found this like test online. I was like, oh yeah,
it is a test.
There was some sort of like, of course, some like lead opt-in, lead magnet test.
We need your email so we can send you the results. How deep are you?
How deep are you? It's like, okay, yes, I'm definitely in a dark night of the soul. And so that was like, gave me framework around what that actually was.
Ooh, that shows the power of naming something.
Yeah.
Like that really almost like releases the power that it has over you, because you're like, oh, okay, that's what you are. Like, that's what you're, okay, got it. Now we can like develop tools and look for things to help us with this. Yeah.
Absolutely. So yeah, that's kind of what gave me framework around it. And then I started kept doing the breath work. And then I read Michael Pollan's book, How to Change Your Mind, around psychedelics, and that shifted my whole perspective, because I grew up with the whole Christian thing of drugs are bad and never do them and all this stuff, and there's nothing good that comes out of them. And then I read that book, I was like, whoa, wait, this is completely contradictory to what I grew up with. And I was like, okay, setting, dosage, like all these things make such a big difference.
What were your biggest takeaways from his book?
Like certain ones are treated more as medicines, right? And they actually heal addiction. Whereas drugs will like make you more addicted. You get addicted to drugs, whereas medicines will actually heal you from the addiction, even to drugs or smoking or tobacco, whatever that is. And PTSD, I was like, okay, that was the first reframe for me.
So it helped make the distinction between drugs versus medicine.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other piece was like, it's so much about setting and the context, because if you're doing these medicines in a public setting, you take some mushrooms and go walk in Central Park or New York City, I don't know, like that would be like chaotic, because you don't know what energies you're gonna bump into. Or, I mean, New York's chaotic and crazy in and of itself. So I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. So I started crafting my own journeys at home, where I would like create a container in my apartment with an eye mask, with a psychedelic therapy playlist, I started mixing with cacao, because that blends as a heart opening space, so it kind of the medicines fuse together, and so you get a more heart opened journey. And I would just like do Sunday service at like,
oh my god,
11 a.m. on a Sunday, and just drop like 3 to 5 grams of mushrooms and really just go for a journey. I started doing it with another friend, and then eventually I was like started doing them just on my own, and then I realized doing them on my own I go even deeper. Because there's nobody else in the room that's like, because you're always like subconsciously managing other energies, so you don't fully surrender into it. I mean, you can learn to do that, and it's as you do more medicine, you learn how to like work with the medicine and go deeper, and you get all these different aha moments or growth spurts, and the medicine takes you where it needs to go. And obviously, like I think we talked about earlier, where you set the intention going into it. You know, and this was what was interesting. I found doing my podcast, right? I always had a fear of speaking in front of people. And this is kind of after the MITT thing.
Oh, really?
So I got used to it a little bit. And then I had started my podcast to start really pushing myself to speak behind a microphone and things like that. And then I would record a solo podcast, and it would take me 2 hours to do like a 10-minute podcast because I would like screw it up, had to go back, like delete part of it and then keep going. And then, so that was part of like when I first started. And then when I started doing more mushroom journeys, some of the journeys I'd be like, put the intention to heal whatever that is that keeps my voice from like flowing. And now I can do like a 40-minute free flow episode, one take. Yeah.
Whoa. That is incredible. So it was interesting. I was talking to someone on my team, and she shared something. What you said made me think of this. I was telling her about, what was I telling her about? Oh, working out. So for whatever reason, I have a block around exercising and working out. I mean, we get it in, but just on like a regular, consistent basis, I've got to like go through my seasons and all of that. So I was just sharing that with her and saying, I know that it helps me show up as my highest self. I know that. I know that it helps me with my homeostasis, regulating my nervous system, like all the things.
Yeah.
Yet there's a part of me that for whatever reason is like, nope, we're not letting you do that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, what's happening? And so she said, there's a practice that I tried where she recorded herself, like retelling the story essentially. So working out, or not even working out, but moving my body is fun and helps me express myself. It's another way for me to express myself because I resonate with that. I'm like, cool, self-expression all day, let's go. So you would like retell the story. And then she said you record yourself saying that. And I think it's like 20 minutes a day, maybe right before bed. And then right when you wake up in the morning, you listen to that recording of your voice saying that over and over on loop for 20 minutes.
Oh my God.
Maybe it wasn't as long as 20 minutes. I remember 20 minutes, but it could be like 10 minutes. But it was like at least 10 minutes, 20 minutes. And she's tried it with a couple blocks she had in her life. And that helped rewire. That helped create a new story or get rid of the story.
Love that.
I know, right?
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a fan. I don't love working out myself either. For me, what shifted was like, I turned 30. It was just like,
like,
okay,
hold on.
A friend of mine was like, what's going on over there? That was the first catalyst. And then the second, it was like, okay, how can I like condense this to like the least amount of time as possible? So I literally have like a 20-minute routine every day.
Oh, that's great. Wait, so what do you do
at
for
my
yours?
house? So I do like 5 minutes of yoga stretching, and then I do these HIIT workouts. So it's like 45-second, 15-second rest, and I'll do 3 sets of. I pick 5 exercises, do 3 sets of each on a 45-second on that interval timer, because when you're doing that on a timer, it actually works better because your body gets tired faster. And I just do it at home, so I don't have to go to the gym. I don't even literally it takes me 20 minutes.
And then you do it like first thing in the morning? What time do you do it?
So I usually wake up at 7, and then I meditate for 25 minutes, and then I go right into working out for 20 minutes.
And then do you listen to music or listen to a book?
I usually listen to podcasts. Yeah. I usually listen to podcasts while I'm working out, because then it kind of like takes me into another space and not really thinking about the working out.
Here. Yeah. That's so interesting. So I know the first time working out, and I think even calling it working out doesn't help me in terms of like how my body receives it and my mind receives it. But working out for the sake of brevity.
Or movement.
Movement, yes. And I think that's what it is. It's really movement. I think there's a study where as long as you get your 10,000 steps in, that's actually shown more longevity in your health and extending your lifespan versus the 30 minutes, hour, whatever, a few times a week of like hardcore, in the gym, all of that we think of when we think of working out. So I think part of it is me redefining it for myself. What I found is that I like working out on my own. So most recently, I'll just do 20 minutes on the elliptical. Not because I know it's not the best for sculpting certain areas like the abs and whatnot, but I'm like, we just need to get ourselves in motion to get to level 1, and then we'll get fancy. But what I love about being on the elliptical is it's become meditative for me because it is like the same motion for 20 minutes straight. I'll listen to an album. So like Beyonce, I'll be listening to her new album. And so then I end up like creative directing the music videos for like every song on the album. So it just becomes like a great, just like creative time for me to like go and creatively direct things. in first her album and then, you know, my life, of course.
I love that. I love that. You're like, Beyonce?
Yes.
Maybe you're creative director.
Exactly. Hey, this is Danielle Leslie, and I have a question for you. If you are a creative entrepreneur and your business is unique, why are you working with a generic accountant? One of the best decisions I made was who I would partner with on my taxes and my accounting. So if you're a creative entrepreneur, you are growing your business, you're scaling your business, I want to introduce you to Revel. Revel is a firm that can help you whether you're looking to prepare your taxes or you're looking for that year-round support. They will tell you what's happening in your business and why. So if you're tired of being ignored, talked down to, or feeling like you are chasing around your accountant and needing to drive the relationship yourself, it's time for a change. Head over to revelcpa.com, revelcpa.com. Head on over, fill out their interest form, and make sure you look into working with them. Again, that is revelcpa.com, revelcpa.com. We all deserve the right firm to partner with. It's been proven that procrastination can be one of our biggest enemies to success. Now, contrary to belief, procrastination is not based on a lack of time management or organizational skills. Procrastination is directly linked to our emotions. Now, the reason I know this is because of Patty Johnston. Patty Johnston is incredible. She's a Course from Scratch member, but even more importantly, she's built multiple multi-million-dollar businesses once she learned how to overcome procrastination. So she's created a program where she shares her system on how to overcome procrastination, and it's based on emotional intelligence, neuroscience, and accountability. She's gonna show you step-by-step how to overcome negative feelings so you can start taking action and start seeing a difference from day one. So text this number right now to schedule an appointment with Patty and her team to see if this is right for you and what steps for you to take to overcome your procrastination. 813-789-1097. And again, the number to text right now is 813-789-1097. Let's all overcome procrastination together. Now let's get back to the episode. We share this interest, I think, in identity and also alchemy. Like I have a program called Course Alchemy.
Yeah.
And then everything is just, we see the power of identity. But you have a very specific practice of identity alchemy that I think you've developed a framework around it. You have a program, you've incorporated it into photography and how you work with clients. So I'd love to hear, like, to you, what is identity alchemy?
Yeah, so it's been interesting over the last couple of years, I'd say the last couple of years of, okay, where am I at in my life? What am I doing? And reflecting. And I was working with a friend of mine, and we kind of started getting onto this idea of identity alchemy, which is, especially as when it comes to building personal brands. Like, that's kind of where it started. It was like, oh, yeah, because building your personal brand, you're always stepping into a new identity, whether you it's conscious or not. We're always, and if you're an entrepreneur and you realize like how much of you is in your business. And so if you're always evolving yourself, you're constantly shifting and changing identities and moving through. And I look at my own life, and I'm like, oh man, I've moved through so many different identities throughout my career and my life and belief systems and all these things. I mean, I think there's different aspects to identity alchemy. There's the personal brand side of things, which is kind of like the more tangible space. So for me, like the photo shoots I call them identity alchemy photo shoots now, because when I'm working with entrepreneurs, because it is a process of kind of distilling who they are and what their pillars are, what their stories are, what their story is, and helping them find that true essence. And building the storytelling images around that. So, and that's different for everyone. I mean, and it's kind of different based off where that person wants to go. I typically have a form that people fill out that asks questions, and then we take that form, and then we have a creative design consult call that we come up with the creative concepts for that, and then and then this third step is like the becoming and the crystallizing of it, where we actually do the shoot. So I'm using this, there's the deconstruct, curate, become. It's a 3-step process. Deconstruct, curate, and become. And so in the photo shoot side of things, you're deconstructing who are you, what are your priorities, what are your values, what are your stories, what stories do you want to tell, what stories are you letting go of out of previous identities. And I mean, it sounds like you're going through a big identity process right now.
Yes.
So you understand what I'm saying, and it's
this
like,
is all hitting. Yes.
Yeah, because
absolutely.
who we were a year ago or 2 years ago, 5 years ago,
yesterday?
6 months ago, yesterday.
In some cases.
It's totally different and we're always going to be going through this identity alchemy process. And I think it's an important process to keep moving throughout your life, even just on a personal level, whether you're choosing to like crystallize it through photographs or crystallize it through hats or whatever that looks like. That's the personal brand side, and that what you're delivering to the world, and like allowing people to connect with you through storytelling photographs. Now on the inside, I think it's just a great process to really actualize and activate your superpowers.
Yeah.
Because I think part of the deconstruction process is deconstructing your adopted identity, what society's told you to be, who society's told you to be, even like the identity that you previously were created. Sometimes you feel beholden to an old identity of who you don't even feel like you are now. So how do you shift through that and evolve and create space to evolve, I think is really important in that process.
I love that you just said that. I'm definitely, as you said, making that transition. And it's interesting because I think about it of 3 phases where it's like, first part of my life was discovering who I was. Then it was creating who I was. And that's when I like created the course business. And I was like, oh, I created my dream life. I've got this, I've got that. And then there reached a point where I felt beholden to what I had created. And it's wild because I'm like, wait, but I created this.
Yeah.
However, then I felt locked into that because it's kind of like the Hamilton thing of Aaron Burr feeling like he had everything to lose. I'm going to lose my family name. I'm going to, so I'm like, I have this brand and now I'm like locked into it.
Yeah.
And I can't deviate off the path. But it's interesting because I'm like, I created this and I feel beholden to it. But then it was that unraveling and then moving into remembering who I was. And I feel like that's where I am now, which is, like I said, developing that muscle of listening to the inner voice and remembering that I'm a vessel, and it's like, all right, just let it flow through.
Yeah.
So that really resonated.
I love that. That's so cool. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about here too, is because, and also I think this is why we're like starting to do these retreats too, and utilizing plant medicine, because plant medicine really help you deconstruct. And also it'll help you like shed old identities, because what I've realized is that plant medicine helps you to let go of the old stories, and because that's what trauma is, right? Trauma is holding on to an old story that doesn't serve you and like letting that, just like looping that over and over and over in your head, and that releases chemicals that destroy you, essentially, makes you sick. So that's why in the PTSD and depression space, psychedelics really help with that. In the identity alchemy of building a personal brand, a lot of times it's like letting go of an old identity and shedding that, but we like hold on to that. I found that with graphic design, like letting go of that identity took a couple of years to really like feel okay, because that was the path that I was on. Letting go of my old religion, like growing up Christian, and like that took me 8 years to really like get rid of the fear of going to hell, essentially. So that's an old identity that I had to shed and like let go of. And now it's like, now I'm like letting go of just being a photographer and being a creative alchemist and doing all these different things and being completely okay with that, and not needing the ego of, oh, I'm shooting this person, shooting that person, this brand and that brand, and letting go of that. So like plant medicine has really helped me through that whole process and shedding the old identities, and then like activating new ideas and now I just kind of follow the flow of whatever I want.
I love that about you. Like, it's just so, like, you're so influential in that way, meaning whenever I'm in my space, I feel like reassured to just flow. You're really like the embodiment of that, of the creative alchemist. And I'm curious, so what was one old story that maybe it was a journey that you had that helped you like rewrite that story or release it, and like what was a new one that replaced it?
Let me think of another one. I had the speaking thing with that was one big one that I really was a noticeable thing, working through letting go of whatever subconscious. I think a lot of it was like growing up Christian and not being able to speak my truth.
Wow.
Because there was only one truth in the house that I grew up in. And if we didn't live that truth, if that wasn't our truth, then it was the wrong truth. It wasn't a truth. It was not truth. So I think a lot of subconscious blocks happened with my voice through that. And so I think plant medicine really helped me on a subconscious level release some of that stuff. So then I would say, like, you know, especially over the last couple of years of like letting go of, I think the ego stuff too. Like once you go, I've been through multiple ego deaths on medicine. And
explain for someone that's a new term.
Yeah,
what is ego death?
Yeah. Good question. So an ego death for me is when you realize, when you can like let go of the narrative construct of this reality. I know that probably is way out there.
Why not break that down?
After I just listened to myself say that. An ego death. So like you're not actually dying, but your ego is what you operate with in this world, right? We all need it. It's not like a bad thing. It's just a matter of whether your identity is wrapped up in your ego, right? If you are your ego identity, then that's who you believe that you are. Then when your business crashes, you're going to crash. You know, that's what happened to me. Is like my ego, I was my ego, I was my business, I was my photography career. And when that crashed, I went down with it, and I thought that I was worthless. And so being able to like die to that and shed that ego, you know, identity was a big piece of my process. So an ego death now in psychedelics, that's it's a little bit different of a ball game. You're kind of letting go of this world. And it's interesting to have experienced this because it's like you basically go into a space of zero thought. Like you have no narrative. You have no, because our worlds exist in their narrative construct in our mind. It's our thoughts.
It's a bunch of stories.
Yeah, and that's what all these things do. Breath work, meditation, they get you out of the stories and into the quantum realm, or the realm where there is no narrative construct. So could that be an ego death? Maybe. I think psychedelics give us the blueprint to go there. And then that's why you can access that. That's how I accessed it on breath, like the same states as DMT on breath work with just breath. And so there is different ways of accessing these things. And so the ego death makes you realize that this is just a construct. This is like a matrix construct. And it was really interesting because my mom passed in November and I was there for her last breath. And to witness her, to walk her home across that line was almost this really wildly profound moment. Because I had been there. I'd gone through that death portal before on psychedelics.
Whoa.
Where the whole world just disappeared.
Wow.
And I was reborn. And so to walk her through that portal, knowing that that's what she was experiencing, was a wild moment. It was a wild moment to watch her take her last breath.
Wow. And so what you're saying is you walked her through into her rebirth.
Yeah, because death is just rebirth, right? It's just, it's just a transition.
Transfer of energy, I mean.
Yeah. Into the ether. And so I've experienced that on psychedelics. I did a mushroom journey a couple weeks after she passed, and it was like, that was what came through in the journey, was like letting go of the narrative construct. Because we're so scared. Like when you first do plant medicines or psychedelics, you're like, whoa, it's so scary, because you're scared of like letting go of this world. Scared of dying, scared of it's the fear. And then once you learn how to surrender and let go, then you're like, that's where the enlightenment lives, is the death in between. So take that back to identity alchemy.
Yes.
Yeah, I believe that like the identity alchemy is a process, and it's a process that's ongoing. And the thing is like we are just like dressing up in identity costumes.
We really are.
Yeah.
Like today I was like, I get to dress up and talk to my friends. Like I get to like play dress up and talk to my friends today.
I love that. Yeah. It's so
Yeah.
funny. And it's honestly, have you heard do you know Paul Selig?
No.
So he like channels like the guides or whatever, and he's got like he was just on Aubrey Marcus podcast. He's got like a few books. He's got one, I just listened to the first one called I Am Word. And so they basically, it's like him writing, like he writes the channel. It's like them speaking through Paul.
Oh, yes.
Essentially. He's pretty big. You might have heard of him. The second book's called Alchemy something. And it was really interesting. I just started it like the other day. And he's like, yeah, so in this book, the next couple chapters are going to be on identity. And the chapters after that are going to be on alchemy. And I was like, what?
Oh!
What?
Ew! Yeah. So that's so wild, because as you were sharing that, I was thinking about how in 2016, when I created your fictional business name, and I was living in the Bay at the time, and it was like my first business, and I went down to the business bureau or whatever it was, and like filled out the papers, and I wrote Course Alchemy Inc. And to this day, I'm like, where did I get alchemy from? I don't even know that I'd listened to The Alchemist by that point. I wasn't on a spiritual journey yet, but it's so strange that like somehow it was just in my world.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Now we're here.
Now we're here.
Yeah, so I think it's interesting because he talks about the idea of how our personality and our physical body is just an identity mask. It's a costume. And we are divinity expressing through that costume. So really we get to choose whoever we want to be. And however we want to express in this world, and not to be attached to that, right? And I think taking it back to plant medicine, I had this distinct journey that showed me that really was like, okay, this was like a year and a half ago on New Year's Day. This journey was like, it was a mushroom. I was literally like, I think I did 2.5 grams of Amazonians. I was listening to East Forest in my bathtub. Just by myself.
I love it.
And I had this whole journey where the mushrooms were, or the medicine was like, every journey up until this one has been about healing the trauma and clearing the spacesuit, clearing the attachment to the spacesuit, and realizing that we are a channel, you are a channel. And now it's upgrades. Now we're like upgrading your consciousness, upgrading your system. And I literally had this like, it felt like I had like a hose plugged into the back of my neck, and I was like downloading information. It was wild.
Wow.
It was wild. Yeah.
Oh my
And so I think that like that's the alchemy piece of it, right? It's like, how can we detach from the spacesuit? How can we detach from the identity that we think that we are? Because it's just a costume. Then it's like, okay, how do we play and dance through life? How do we create the most epic life experience that we can?
Yeah. God, I have a couple thoughts, but I'll start with this thread and then have another thread that I want to ask you about, a distinction. But I've been watching like Trevor Noah, and he has behind the scenes clips on his show.
Best.
Right? Isn't that the best part of the show?
Yeah.
So I watched the behind the scenes clips, and then one day it like hit me, and I was like, wait a minute. The behind the scenes, like, he needs to, or not needs to, but he gets to have a quote unquote 9 to 5. He has a very glamorous 9 to 5, but he works this job, right? Doing this show. He lives his life, because between the scenes we get to hear about when he was at the park and he saw the difference between South African parents, how they interact with their kids, and American parents, how they interact with their kids. He's talking about that. He's had hardships. He's talked about growing up, losing his grandmother. Like, those are all things that some could, looking from the outside in, be like, oh my gosh, like, he's had a hard life. It was, hardships and all this. Yeah. And what I realized in that moment was what he shares in the between the scenes is like his stand-up routine. He's like, this is my stand-up routine, because he would be commenting and commentary on his life. And I realized that, okay, for me, every day, everything I do, the ups, the downs, everything, however I want to see it, I'm like, I need material anyway. I'm like, what am I going to talk about at the dinner table every night? Like, I need material. Yeah. And when I, end this version of this lifetime and transition, like, I'm going to need some material at the gates or whatever, to tell the next version of the soul. Like, I'm going to need some material. So I'm like, this is all material. Like, this is all material for my stand-up. That's what it is.
Such a brilliant way of looking at it. Right?
It really removed the pressure. It really removed the pressure. And then I wanted to ask you about, do you see a difference between identity and personality? And I'll give you like the why, because this occurred to me this morning, actually. When I think about identity, it is something that I relate to as being able to change, transform from moment to moment. So it's like this, it flows. When I think about personality, it's our like personal reality. And that's the one that I guess is often attached to the stories, the trauma, and on a scientific level, our cells and how they're expressing themselves as we're interpreting the messages our body is sending to our mind. So it seems like personality, sometimes I realized I might use identity and personality interchangeably and treat them interchangeably, when really, when I'm talking about identity, I might be talking about personality and vice versa. So I'm wondering if you've ever thought about the difference between those two, or to you, what is the difference, if there is, between identity and personality?
Great question. Great question. I think that I would say they're slightly different, because I feel like identity is something that shifts and that you can latch onto and attach to. So like you look at identity politics or identity, I am this, I am that, I am a photographer, I am a entrepreneur, I am this. It's like an identity that you're almost like stepping into. Whereas your personality kind of almost comes more from your mannerisms and like how you interact. And I think some of that stuff can be shifted and moved, and if you're like conscious and aware to it. But I feel like that's less identity and more cellular. You know, your personality is kind of like your energetic imprint as well, that you imprint into people, right? And that comes from your deep thoughts, your thought system. And I remember reading. Have you read Joe Dispenza?
Yes.
I think he
Breaking
talks
the
about
Habit of Being. Yes, that's where I got your personality is your personal reality, from Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself.
Yeah.
And that helped me shift. And I'm realizing, I talk about it in a term of it helped me shift maybe my identity, when in reality I'm like, no, it helped me actually alter my personality, because it helped me alter my personal reality, because I was able to retrain how my cells responded, or my mind responded to body sensations, and therefore how it expressed itself through my cells. Yeah, that's where I got that from.
Yeah, I was like, I feel, not since I was like, I feel like I've like kind of thought about this before, and I did remember kind of hitting that in one of his books. I was like, that's very interesting, because the more we repeat something, right, like an action from a thought pattern, and then the more we repeat that, the more it becomes embedded into our personality and the way that we act. Yeah, I feel like that's less identity and more of a way of being. And I mean, maybe an identity is a way of being, or it's like a choice to step into. It's almost like what actors do, right? They step into a person, or they step into an identity or a character. I feel like that's what an identity is stepping into a character or something of that sort, or an identification. And personality, you're just kind of like, oh, okay, this is how I operate in the world, this is how I interact with people, which is also still malleable and alchemic, if you want it to be.
Yeah, I think what I'm visualizing is personality as like the lenses in which I see the world. Because for instance, you and I could both be looking at that tree, and I could say, oh my God, that reminds me of when I grew up and and it wasn't a good, and then you could be like, oh my God, it's like green trees, like it's beautiful. So it's almost like the personality, because it's tied to like previous trauma, any relationship between body sensation and thoughts. It's almost like it's the lens in which we see the world, which of course impacts how we show up, how we be, the energy we give off to someone else, you know, the things that trigger us. Yeah. Well, what I love is your retreats that you're putting on incorporate all of that. So the fact that on the first day you said you start with the body, and that's where the trauma is, and that's where you can release that, and that to me is tied to the personality. That's the deep shit. Like, and it's ancestral. Like, it's not just, I tried this new identity on yesterday. It's like that new. No, it's like the deep ancestral shit that that I saw on one of my trips. Like, one of my trips, it was amazing. It was like an excavation site, and I saw like layers and layers down. And I'm like, and I was bawling, and I was just releasing. And I remember in the moment, I said, these are not my tears. Like, these are my ancestors' tears. Like, I was looking at the excavation site, and I was like digging out like deeper, deeper, deeper. And so to me, that is like the deep stuff. That's the, as we're calling it in this context, the personality. And I love that in the first day, you're reaching that. You're like, let's get out of the mind. I'm not going to have you, we're not going to nope, let's just feel into it and release it.
Yeah, and that's like at a kind of a subconscious level too. You're not even really. Although we do like a little microdose of peyote, so it kind of drops you in. And I did like a 5-hour session with this. You can do a private session with this team as well. And it's like the man and the woman. They're a couple, and it was 5 hours by myself.
Whoa,
yeah,
that's a long time.
Yeah, they just kind of go until they
that.
figure it out, and they give you your guides as well. So she's Indonesian, and she kind of just has these special abilities to see or feel, and then she's just like been cultivating that, right? And so they start out, they give you a microdose of peyote, so it drops you into your body, and so like I was almost able to kind of like move with their hands, it just drop into what they were doing a little bit more, which is why they give it to you. And so she goes first, and she kind of moves you through, just starts up at the top and moves all the way down your body and finds all of your energetic blockages. And then she'll like go into the myofascial tissue and like really push really hard. And then like move it through. And then at the same time she's seeing, and then they kind of take a break, and she'll ask you, she's like, oh, did you have something happen at age 6? Or the age, whatever, they'll go through different ages where she actually felt like you experienced something. And then they'll connect you with your guides. So sometimes she'll see your guides. They had like 5 guides, which are amazing.
Wait, so what do you mean she sees your guides?
She kind of sees like your counsel, your guides. So I have, and you'll love this because it's totally me. It's my first guide was a white male puma.
Oh.
Second guide was a black female hawk, or female black hawk.
Okay.
Second one was a peacock. Go figure. The fourth one was a white female dragon. So like intuition, I definitely have a balanced masculine, feminine. So I think that's where that comes through. And then the fifth one was a monk.
Oh my gosh.
So the monk of like wisdom and just Zen.
What do the first 2 animals like represent, symbolize?
The white male puma is kind of like almost king of the jungle. Like I move through this world with intention. And the black female hawk was kind of like seeing things from a bird's eye view, but also in a caretaking space. Wow. And then the peacock.
Got it.
And then the white female dragon is this like feminine and divine feminine intuition, which I feel like comes forth with myself quite a bit. And then obviously the monk was kind of just Zen and wisdom and sharing the wisdom. So it's like now then you're able to call on these guides now, because now it's like articulated in my mind, right? And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, let's call the guides in.
Oh my gosh. So all of us have a council. So we all have different archetypes.
Yeah. So everyone has different ones. Some people had like there's different animals. The one guy had a wolf. And so everybody, it's kind of different for everyone. And if you do a private session, then it's like a lot easier for them to like really tap in, because it takes her a while of working on you to be able for her to like tap into that.
Which one do you call on the most?
Probably the last 2, the dragon, the female dragon, and the monk, and probably the peacock.
I feel like I was like, you don't call on me. The peacock just shows up.
Peacock just shows up.
Exactly. Peacock's always at the party. You don't need to call on the peacock. Which I love.
Peacock is always at the party. Totally. I love that. Yeah. So, I mean, that's, we're doing this one in October, and I think we'll probably push it, like let people, if they want to book like a private session that it's longer and more focused on one person, on you, then like that'll be it'll be a good offering to have.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would love to know, just have more awareness around my council and to call on them. It was interesting. I was talking to my dad when he was last here, and it was one of the longest conversations I've ever had with him, which is wild. And he ended up telling me just about how he calls on his ancestors. And it was strange because I was like, I didn't know that, Dad. Like, I didn't realize you were so spiritual. Like,
wow.
But it makes sense because now I'm in more of that space.
Yeah.
Whereas before I wouldn't even know to ask the question or have the conversation. So I love this like further defining of your counsel and each of them serving you and supporting you in a different way, and having the opportunity to to call on them in different situations where you're like, I really could use this right now?
Yeah, it's definitely like it's much more clear and articulated just in my own mind, which is awesome. Even though I look back and I'm like, I've definitely felt all of them come through. Like that feels like it sums me up in like five guides.
Are you down to time travel?
Of course.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So we're going to speak into our future. And by we, I mean you. Not the royal we, but you. But you're going to start. And as you know, I'm a fan of just collapsing time and not having the A to B to C to D, but just where do we show up? What's happening? So I would love to hear, what is a future, higher, however you want to define it, 10 years from now, whatever it is. Who is Nick? What is he doing? Where is he being? How he be? What's he waking up and doing? What is he waking up and looking at, interacting with? What is your life like?
I think what's interesting is I love the flow of life and not necessarily planning. However, I have a lot of things that I love doing and I love building that I would love to see in fruition. That is going to be in fruition. It is in fruition as we are speaking.
It is.
So all the things that I'm doing now, the creative pursuits is scaled and probably living with more nature involved. But my friend 11 and I are doing the retreats we're building up a project called the House of Magi, which is part of these experiences. Like these retreats are part of the experiences, but we also want to build, they want to build like a circus and magician circus, but we want to build like creative sanctuaries where people can come and be creative off grid. It has everything that from biohacking, medicine space, art studios. Like these are, 10 years down the road, these are in full fruition, multiple locations around the world that we can go and drop into and work on creative projects. We're creating art on a mass scale that impacts the world, that influences the world to raise consciousness. My hats are all over the place.
Yeah.
I've got photography books, portrait books. I'm learning how to tattoo now.
Oh, cool.
So I'll be doing tattoos.
Yes.
Yeah. And just living life in a greater flow. And wherever that takes me, I think that's kind of what I've been. I don't like to plan things. I like to let life unfold and see where it moves. And I think that's been part of my own alchemic process even now, is like, how much can I let go of attachment to future results and like let life become even more magical than I could ever imagine.
I love that. I love how you opened with, and also there is no timeline. Like this is already happening on another quote unquote timeline dimension. Like that version of me is living this out, has already lived it out. Yeah.
It's all happening now.
Yes, it is.
The Taurus of time.
And then speaking of tattoos, like this is so beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, this is her name is Aulita. She's in Tulum actually.
Wow.
We're actually talking about
way.
Yes, we were actually talking about having her come to the retreat and do tattoos.
Yes.
Like at the end of the week.
This is beautiful.
Thank you.
Is this her signature style?
It's
or
her
is this
signature style. She's got another
Okay.
style that she's been developing, but she actually channeled this through ayahuasca journeys. And so it took me 10 years because I did this one and this one, and then I waited and I just didn't have any idea of what I wanted. And then I saw her stuff. I was like, I want one. And I got one 2 days later.
Whoa.
Yeah, while I was down there last year. And, she takes an intention, and then my intention was expansion. And then she creates the art out of the intention.
I love that. It's so beautiful.
So yeah, we're talking about having her come to the retreat
You
and
should.
do
Oh my
tattoos
God, that
at
would
the
be
end.
so amazing. Yes.
Yeah.
Look at me, I'm like, yes.
Yes.
I'm like, if I'm there, I want Alita there. Like,
yeah,
because
that'd be amazing.
you talked about like crystallizing the experience.
Yeah.
And yes, these are costumes, right? The body, the three, but it's like, this is a way to have it like ever present and to have that crystallization, that reminder, like in our view, you know, every day, in case we get lost or in a different version of ourselves. It's like, oh, let's come back and remember.
Yeah, that's what I love
that.
about that's the only way I get tattoos is to like, or things like this, is to remind me That's why I put in the hats, like the intentions in the hats. The hats are the totem crowns that remind you who you are every day. And when you put it on, it's like you're stepping into that identity.
This is where we can share one truth that we may not even have shared with ourselves yet. And maybe not with anyone else. But yeah, what is one truth that is just coming up for you right now?
I mean, I've just kind of really been exploring pushing new edges and just exploring, pushing myself in boundaries that I've never been before. Like, for instance, I just went to a play party for the first time.
How fun. Oh my God, how was that?
It was wild. I mean, I was like kind of more just an observer because like it was such an edge for me to even go because I grew up in such a conservative Christian upbringing that going to a play party was like, oh, this is kind of actually normal and cool.
Right. What was the inspiration to go?
I've thought about it for a while. Like I've over the like I've had a lot of kind of friends in that space, and I'm like, okay. And I was like, I think I finally just kind of worked up the courage to go. And then the opportunity came, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that resonates. Wow. And so yeah, I feel like that is like a truth that is something that is a new exploration.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's like all aspects of life. Where are we dimming or not letting ourselves fully express? And so I think examining every aspect of my life and seeing where I feel like I could push boundaries more. If we're pushing and pushing those edges and pushing those boundaries, then we get to live a more expressed life.
Yes.
And the more expressed life is more magic.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wow.
So fun.
Oh, good. It was fun for me.
Great. Love it.
After watching this conversation, I know people are going to be running to wherever you are. So where's the best place to find you?
Yeah, I would say Instagram at Nick Onken, Nikonken. And then Onken.co is, I'm in the process of redesigning it because we're coming out with the Identity Alchemy course. And so I'm like working with somebody like, okay, we're going to redo your whole page so that people understand your ecosystem, because I have so many things that offerings that people can partake in. So Onken.co will be that landing spot.
I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Listen, sometimes life be lifing, and we do not know what's coming down that road next. Well, that's what happened to me in 2016 when I was unexpectedly laid off from my job. And I was 6 figures in student loan debt. I had no savings, and I didn't know what was going to happen next. Now, luckily, I had this little voice inside of me at that time that I couldn't ignore, and it was telling me to take the leap. It was saying, use this as your opportunity to build your business. Use this as your opportunity to create your dream life. And so I believe that life happens for us, not to us. And that nudge in my spirit, I should listen to it. Luckily, I did. Fast forward to today, I have a business that's made over $20 million, and I've helped over 10,000 people create their online businesses and their dream lives. So do you want to learn how to turn your story into an online product and launch in 30 days? Head on over to coursefromscratch.com/since3000. I want you to join us on this journey so you can listen to that little voice inside of you too. So go now, do yourself a favor, coursefromscratch.com/since3000.